The Microsoft Surface. Perhaps one of the least consumer-friendly devices ever created. So, we have something. It was brought in as a no power. We open it up, put a battery in. It turned on. Cool. Without battery. Came back the next day, off. And really what I think it's doing is it's not charging, and it probably turned on with the new battery because it had some power in it. So my thinking in here is we maybe do some Frankenstein bullshit and rig up the data lines on the battery to the old battery BMS so that it thinks the battery's plugged in. And then I'm going to take these, 4 voltage and ground delivery lines and rig those up to a power supply and try to power it like that and make a backup and get the data off of this thing, because the data is important. Person needs the stuff off of there, and I'm an insane person, so we'll try this and see what happens. See, ideally I would have had this idea before I cut off the terminal from the old battery. I could have just left the 4 lines in the middle just, hooked up still, but oh well. What I think I will do... this glue looks like it's going to be annoying to get off. Let's just scrape these with a razor. These are really small wires. I won't be able to get them with my wire strips. So, instead, something like this. And I should be able to just kind of melt the rest of the wire with the soldering iron. Just get some solder on there. Scraping away some of the plastic. Okay. And you know what I will do here is, and we did just look at the, there is a schematic available for this if you have the power of Google search. But also on the back of the BMS, it actually just shows kind of what the data lines are, right? We need to detect. There's data clock, and just another data line. It's like a battery shutdown line or something like that. Okay. We're saving a screenshot of that. Let's get some smolder on these. You know what I think I'll do is I'll run big wires to the left and right first. Let me go grab those.
But he's still got a capo, This is permission for all of you to use a capo whenever you want. Come on, Mark. Mark Lettieri.
Okay, it lives. The last, I didn't really see the point of talking over what I was doing the last section, so I'll just, you know, put music over it or something. Just kind of soldering wires to things. So, basically, I cut off all the cells because I thought maybe, I don't know, that was causing my issue. We are moving. I guess you really can't see anything on the microscope camera. There we go. We're copying some files right now onto an external drive because we're going to just move this shit onto a different computer. I think the fundamental problem on this is that it doesn't charge because it did turn on when we had a battery in there, and I think that battery drained, then it wouldn't charge anymore. Almost kind of like TriStar style. But I really couldn't find a lot of information on these online, and since it turned on off a battery before, and this person's data is important, we're just, you know, Frankensteining the battery terminal. I'll probably just show another little clip just with like the final wiring on that, because I don't know if I have that on video. But, you know, fundamentally, you know, we have this guy and this guy soldered to the power supply and to the BMS, and then we have these 4 wires still on the BMS, so they're not like an open line on the circuit. And then we also just have a Type-C plugged in. Someone in a group chat had mentioned, I was kind of sending messages and then I just started fucking with it and got it working. But they had described it kind of like, you might have an iPhone with a fully charged battery, you press the power button, nothing happens until you plug in a charger. That's something to do with the BMS recalibrating or something like that. Like, even if there's voltage present on it, it needs like a charger voltage input just to do anything. And in this case too, like, we can see this is running still like no current. Obviously it's, you know, in a power supply, but with a battery in there, it would kind of do the same thing. It would do 20 volts and like 0.05 or 15 volts on the little magnet connector. I have this thing for surfaces, so we can plug this into the power supply and see what kind of current they're running. This person already, they just got a new laptop. We're gonna get this stuff just moved onto it, basically, and then maybe we'll hang this up on the wall of shame. I'll circle back in a bit when this is done backing up. It's probably gonna take a few hours, and we'll just go over the wiring on the BMS. But if you had a device that wasn't charging, you could do something similar, or if you didn't have too many files, right, just plug in a battery with some charge, you know, hopefully, and that's enough battery to back up the stuff. In this case, this is going to need to be running for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, so this works. Alrighty, guys and gal. So at the very least, I know this is a way you can power a Microsoft Surface Pro 7 off of a power supply. Cutting the wires like I did initially was completely unnecessary. I basically could have just patched on, you know, positive, negative onto the BMS by just kind of scraping away this glue stuff. I did cut off the cells. That might not be necessary. That's what I did here, and I didn't want some weird interaction to happen with the cells and make them explode or something like that. So I'd say this is probably the safer route. At least if the cells are drained, you can just kind of, you know, cut off the leads with some pliers, you know, basically. And then, I mean, these red wires are, it's just 2 big wires. They hook up to this. I had the power supply set to 7.6 volts, and I set the current limit to 3 amps. I didn't really see it draw more than like 2.2 amps, but you don't want like the over current protection to be like tripping on your power supply because that'll cut off. Rigging just this and then trying to power on the Surface, it would say the battery was low, which obviously isn't true. This is a power supply. It's always at 100%. But we just plugged in the Type-C, even though it wasn't actually running current through Type-C. That seemed to do something to make it turn on. Again, think like, you know, iPhone, you have a fully charged battery, the fucker won't turn on, you plug in a cable, and then it turns on. because of the charging circuitry or other magic. No one really knows how that stuff works. Hopefully you don't ever have to do this, because these are really awful machines, which I am almost always sure to tell my customers, unless they seem like they really like their Surface. I don't want to make them sad. They really like their Surface, but if they're trying to replace their device, I will certainly convince them to, because really these are awful devices, especially if you have a problem with them. They're very unnecessarily expensive to repair and difficult to work on. On the Surface Pro 7, for example, it's like you can get the screen off fairly reliably without damaging it. Basically anything early, like the Surface Pro 4 and earlier especially, had comically brittle glass on their screens and way too much adhesive to seal them. It's a very sad device, and this one, almost more so because the drive's not removable. At least on the older Surfaces, right, where you can just unplug the battery and take out the drive and back someone's stuff up more traditionally. But in this case, we basically have a NAND chip soldered on the board right there that you can't, someone, perhaps DOS dude, could upgrade the storage on here. There's a few insane enough to try, but on something like this, that really wouldn't be economically practical. And just sort of, generically for us, anything with like soldered storage, soldered RAM, cough, MacBooks, we don't really recommend to people. Unless you like something with a MacBook, right? You might, be using software where you need Mac OS. So, okay, I guess get a MacBook. This though, there's plenty of Windows machines that don't have a bunch of silly bullshit like this. Please don't buy Microsoft Surfaces, even the new ones. They all suck. Get Lenovo ThinkPads, because those are good laptops, and some other ones too. Lenovo also makes shit devices, but ThinkPads are generally good. Well, hopefully this helps someone power on their Surface Pro 7, which is not charging, so that they may get a backup and move their info onto not a Microsoft Surface. We'll see you in the next video.